really want to know who the heroes are. And the heroes are, I'd like to say, is my generation, the first generation of agents with DEA, and especially those African-American agents who worked undercover. That's how you made your bones in the 70s.
I was sent here to do a police officer who apparently worked narcotics and had gone into the dope dealing business by the name of Marzette.
Henry Marzette was a Detroit narcotics officer who turned to the dark side and started selling dope himself. After his release from prison around 1960, he started getting dope from the Italians and quickly rose to the top of Detroit's drug business.
I was given money as a young man on Washington Boulevard by Henry Marzette, and he gave me money for school. And that's what he said. The money wasn't for me to go and get clever in an Italian knit. He gave me that money and he said, and I expect for you to go and use this for school and nothing else.
In the summer of 1970, Henry Marzette had decided to take over Detroit's drug business. He called a meeting of the city's top dealers and told them that he had secured a direct Asian source of supply and that he could guarantee 20 pounds a week of pure China white, enough to supply most of the city.
We always had the African Americans involved in the distribution of drugs throughout the inner cities. And in the 70s, it's when the African Americans were becoming more prominent in business. The drug dealers wanted to do the same thing. And it just made business sense from their perspective to cut out the middleman, which would have been the Italian Mafia, and go right to the source and import heroin and control the distribution.
With his chief hitman, Jimmy Moody, standing behind him, Marzette proposed that each dealer put up $50,000 in advance and that he'd provide the dope and police protection. Not everybody was willing to work for Henry Marzette, though. Angry words soon led to dead bodies on the street, and things quickly got out of control. A war between Marzette's allies, known as the Westside 12, against dealers loyal to the Italian Mafia, known as the Eastside 7, led to 200 dead bodies. Jimmy Moody himself supposedly killed 15 people between Christmas of 1970 and July of 1971. In April of 1972, Henry Marzette died at home from kidney failure. On his deathbed, the head of the state of Michigan's Organized Crime Division, an old colleague of Marzette from his days as a Detroit undercover narcotics cop, showed up and asked him to stop the drug war. Henry Marzette did this by having his chief hitman, Jimmy Moody, killed. Moody was found in the trunk of his Eldorado at Detroit Metropolitan Airport.
The day I arrived in Detroit, I was shown two bodies that had been placed inside of the trunk of cars at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport. And the stench, the bodies were decomposed and you could see the maggots.
With Henry Marzette gone, John Sutton's next target was Denard "Devil" Jackson, a business partner of Courtney Brown Jr.'s father.
Within a day of arriving in Detroit, Marzette died apparently of natural cause, and Devil Jackson had gotten shotgun in the face the night before. And there was some indication that the person that killed Devil Jackson was one of the informants that I would be working with.
Devil Jackson, being an old-timer guy who kind of knew his way around the streets, he sees that for whatever reason, this guy Eddie Jackson's the real thing, and this guy has gone from a nobody in the streets to the man in the streets in like 18 months.
Devil Jackson had been shotgunned in the face the day that John Sutton arrived in Detroit, possibly by the very confidential informant Sutton was supposed to be working with. So he turned his sights to other dealers, including Devil Jackson's protege, a man that had managed to stay out of Henry Marzette's war, Eddie Jackson. Early 1971, John Klassen, Eddie Jackson's supplier, was indicted in federal court and promptly disappeared. But Jackson and Courtney Brown kept their operation going until they made an even bigger connection in New York City.
I told you all that I was the greatest of all time.
So the plan is simple. Eddie will go out to New York, take his bankroll, take half his crew with him. Devil Jackson will introduce him to Goldfinger, some of the Cubans out there. He'll go back, get back in business.
Sunday, listen, I told you today, I'm still the greatest of all time.
So when Eddie's at the fight, of course, there's an iconic photo taken in the Ebony magazine where the famous picture of Frank Lucas from American Gangster fame when he's in his chinchilla. And also Eddie is photographed by the photographers of Ebony in conjunction with Devil Jackson, a guy named 5-0 Garrett, and his brother Elijah. The day before the fight, Eddie has a happenstance meeting with some members of the Gambino crime family. And, you know, the rest is kind of history. Eddie ends up doing business with the Gambino family for the next 10 years and makes, you know, phenomenal amounts of money.
Eddie Jackson crossed paths with the high-ranking member of the Gambino Mafia family, the largest and most powerful in the country, who told him, quote, "It looks like we're in the same business." And indeed, they were.
After that, I was assigned investigations. I went out and worked on Eddie Jackson.
Once he bought that Rolls Royce and moved to Southfield and tore down the houses and rebuilt the houses, he was the target.
You're under constant surveillance. There have been all kinds of stories about your alleged connections with the underworld drug market. What's your reaction, Mr. Jackson?
Well, as far as the connection, that's 100% false. And as far as the surveillance, I welcome, you understand, anybody who feel like they want to waste their time watching me, you understand, well, then they can.
The authorities had leaked the indictment to the press. They had put our homes on the front page and...
Mr. Jackson, it's alleged that just 6 years ago you were earning a little better than $3 an hour as an auto production worker. Just how did you come to acquire this home in Southfield and your other business interests, your automobiles?
Well, I think the law states, you know, that you have to file your income. You know, if I tell you that, you know, then you know my secret, you know. But as long as I file my income, and I think this is what the law states, you know, and I do that.
Do you deny flatly that you were in any way tied in with the illegal drug trafficking?
Yes, I do.
Would you care to reveal just what your business holdings are, how you've acquired this wealth?
No, it is a matter of record. You know, if you want to check on that, you can check.
It's a matter of record. You're saying that you have property?
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm. How did you acquire the property? Would you mind telling us that, sir?
If I tell you that, then you'll know my business.
Your family's house appears on the front page of the biggest newspapers in Detroit. You know, this was the biggest story in town for the summer of '73. And here we have Milton Henry, who was your father and Eddie's lawyer, kind of negating some of the stuff that was going on.
Now, on the other hand, we don't think the government can try this lawsuit anywhere but in a court. And that's all we've been saying, that they ought not to attempt to cast us into the news media and to a public trial in this unrestrained area of rumor, innuendo, suspicion, and all of that.
On just the surface, we were the quote-unquote black success story.
To get the story of this market, to be able to tell you the secret of selling the Negro, we did a lot of digging. We talked to leading businessmen, to customers, and to salesmen.
We're right next to Eddie's next to us. You got the Cadillac, you got Mercedes, you got another Cadillac, you got his crowd pleaser Rolls Royce.
Yeah.